Sorry, I'm late. Mara Ellison looked up from the glass of sparkling water she had stopped drinking 20 minutes ago. The man from her blind date profile stood just inside the restaurant doors, 31 minutes late. He had sent one hurried message 20 minutes earlier. Caregiver emergency, running late. Still trying to make it. Nothing in that message had mentioned the elderly woman beside him. That alone would have been enough. But Wesley Hart had not come alone. An elderly woman stood beside him in a navy cardigan, one hand looped through his arm. Wesley carried her coat over one shoulder and a small canvas bag in the other. He looked as though he had changed shirts in a hurry. His dark hair was still slightly damp near the temples. The woman, on the other hand, looked perfectly pleased to be there. Wesley reached the table and exhaled. I'm really sorry. My mother's caregiver had an emergency about 45 minutes ago. I called 2 neighbors, my cousin, and a man I haven't spoken to since Thanksgiving. Mara stared at him. He gave a tired half-smile. The Thanksgiving call did not go well. The older woman patted his arm. You forgot Diane's sister. I did not forget Diane's sister. Diane's sister is the emergency. Oh, she considered this. That seems inconvenient. Mara laughed before she meant to. Wesley's shoulders lowered about half an inch. He looked at her carefully. I completely understand if you'd rather reschedule. That surprised her. Most men who arrived late spent the first 5 minutes explaining why the lateness wasn't really their fault. Wesley was giving her an exit. Mara glanced at the older woman. The woman glanced back. Then she leaned toward Wesley and whispered loudly enough for half the restaurant to hear, She's much prettier than the picture. Wesley closed his eyes. Mom. What? You can't say that. Why not? It's good news. Mara covered a smile with her hand. The woman extended hers across the table. June Hart. Apparently, I'm your chaperone. Mara shook it. Mara Ellison. I know. Wesley looked alarmed. June continued. He showed me your picture. Once, Wesley said. Twice. It was once. You zoomed in. Mara raised an eyebrow. Wesley pulled out a chair for his mother. I'm going to start this date over. Please do, Mara said. He sat down. Hi, I'm Wesley. Mara nodded solemnly. Nice to meet you, I'm Mara. June looked between them. Oh, good, now we're caught up. For the first time that evening, Mara stopped checking the time. She had been on 9 blind dates in the past year. She remembered because she kept a private note in her phone, not with ratings exactly, because that would have felt cruel, more like forecasts. Date 2 would talk about cryptocurrency before appetizers. He had. Date 4 would ask whether running a tech company made her intimidating. He had waited 16 minutes. Date 7 would describe himself as an alpha male. He lasted 6. Mara had become good at predicting the shape of an evening before it happened. It protected her from disappointment. Tonight, every prediction had failed before Wesley even sat down. The waiter approached. June immediately asked, Do you have pie? Mom, we haven't ordered dinner. I'm planning ahead. The waiter smiled. We have apple and chocolate cream. June looked at Mara. See? This is why planning matters. Mara laughed again. Wesley shook his head. I promise she normally has more regard for sequence. No, I don't. That is also true. Dinner began strangely and became stranger. June asked Mara what she did. I started a software company. June nodded as though this confirmed something. So, computers. Mostly. What do they do? Mara started giving the explanation she used at networking events. Asterline builds scheduling and workflow systems for regional service companies. June lifted one finger. So, computers that tell people where to be. Mara paused. Actually, yes. June looked at Wesley. You need that. I have a calendar. You missed the dentist last month. I moved the dentist. You missed the new dentist. Mara laughed into her water. Wesley looked at her. You're enjoying this. More than I expected. Fantastic. He said it with such dry resignation that she laughed harder. When Mara asked what he did, Wesley answered simply, I play piano. I teach during the day. June immediately said, He's very good. Wesley looked at her. She was my first teacher. so her opinion is professionally compromised. I taught public school music for 38 years. June straightened proudly. He played too fast. I was 10. You were impatient. I was 10. Still impatient. Mara looked at Wesley. Seems like a reliable witness. You're taking sides already. I follow the evidence. June pointed at her. I like this one. Wesley nearly dropped his fork. Mom. What? Mara expected embarrassment. Instead, what she felt was warmth. June was funny, yes, but there were other moments. Small ones. Twice, she asked Mara how long she had lived in Pittsburgh. The second time, Wesley answered as naturally as if the question had never been asked. When June briefly called the waiter Daniel, Wesley did not correct her until she asked him later whether Daniel's mother still worked at the library. Then he said gently, "Different Daniel, Mom." June blinked. For a moment, confusion moved across her face. Then she smiled. Too many Daniels. Wesley smiled back. Always has been the problem. Mara noticed how carefully he did it. No impatience, no public correction, no look that said, "Here we go again." Just enough help to keep his mother inside the conversation rather than making her feel as though she had failed it. Halfway through dinner, June set down her napkin. "I need the ladies' room." Wesley stood immediately. "I'll show you." June frowned at him. "I am 72 years old. I know. I can find a bathroom. I also know. You're hovering. I prefer attentive. You prefer annoying." Mara smiled. June pointed at her. "See? She agrees." I said nothing. "You have an expressive face." Wesley walked his mother toward the hallway anyway. At the entrance, June waved him off. "Stay there." He did. Only when she disappeared through the restroom door did he return to the table. Mara leaned back. "So?" Wesley sighed. "So, how long?" He knew exactly what she meant. "Official diagnosis? 14 months. Alzheimer's? Early stage." Mara looked toward the hallway. "I'm sorry." He nodded. "Thank you." She waited. Most people filled quiet moments when illness entered a conversation. Wesley did not. After a few seconds, he said, "She still does a lot on her own. Some days are easier than others." He looked toward the hall. "She's never wandered away before. Until tonight, unfamiliar bathrooms were still something she handled fine on her own. And tonight? Tonight was supposed to be easier. There was no bitterness in it. Just fact." Mara looked at the empty chair beside him. "What happened to your caregiver?" "Her sister fell and broke her wrist. Diane called me from the emergency room. And you still came." Wesley rubbed the back of his neck. "I had already canceled once." "So had I." "Rachel said that." "Rachel talks too much. Rachel thinks she's helping humanity. She thinks everyone should be married by 40. I'm 39. Mara smiled. "Then you have 11 months. Wesley looked at his watch theatrically. "That feels aggressive." They talked for another minute. Then Wesley looked toward the hallway. Mara noticed. He tried to keep listening. 2 sentences later, he looked again. "How long has she been gone?" Mara asked. 6 minutes. "That doesn't sound long." "It usually isn't." Something in his voice had changed. Mara stood. "I'll check." "You don't have to." "I know." She walked toward the restroom. Neither of them knew yet that the next 2 minutes would change far more than their first date. The women's restroom was empty. 3 stalls, all open. Mara checked them twice anyway. When she returned, Wesley was already standing. "She's not there." His face changed completely. Not dramatically. That made it worse. All the color seemed to drain from him at once. He moved toward the hostess. "Did you see the woman who came in with me? Navy sweater, gray hair?" The hostess thought. "She went toward the side hall a few minutes ago." "There's an exit there?" "Yes." Wesley was already moving. Mara followed. Outside, the Pittsburgh air had sharpened. It was colder than when Mara arrived. Wesley looked left, then right. "Mom." Nothing. He checked the sidewalk toward the parking garage. Mara looked the opposite direction. There. June stood beneath the awning of a closed stationery shop less than a block away. She was holding her purse against her chest. She looked smaller than she had at dinner. Wesley started running. Then, several yards away from her, he slowed. Mara understood immediately. He did not want to frighten her. "Mom." June looked up. For a second, there was no recognition. Then it arrived. Wesley. He reached her and wrapped both arms around her. June looked embarrassed. I was coming back. I know. I think I took the wrong door. It's okay. I knew the restaurant was here. I know. Her voice became quieter. I just couldn't see it. Wesley released her enough to take both her hands. Your hands are freezing. I'm fine. Your hands disagree. He rubbed them between his palms. June looked past him and saw Mara. Oh. Mara came closer. June gave a nervous little laugh. I've ruined his date. Mara shook her head. No, you haven't. I have. You really haven't. Wesley took off his jacket and placed it over his mother's shoulders. He did not ask why she had left. He did not tell her what she should have done. He did not make his fear her punishment. Mara watched all of it, and something inside her shifted. They returned to the restaurant only long enough to collect their things. Wesley looked at Mara near the door. I should take her home. Of course. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. He smiled faintly. That may take practice. June touched Mara's arm. I liked the pie. You didn't have pie. June looked at Wesley. See, he rushes everything. Mara laughed. Wesley helped his mother into her coat. He did not ask Mara for another date. He did not try to rescue the evening. He simply took care of June. Mara stood beside the restaurant window and watched him walk his mother toward the parking garage, matching his pace to hers. The date had been 31 minutes late, included an elderly chaperone, repeated questions, a missing person scare, and no dessert. By every system Mara had ever used to predict a date, it should have been a disaster. That was the problem. She did not want it to be over. At 10:47 that night, Wesley's phone buzzed. He was sitting at his mother's kitchen table, filling Monday through Sunday slots in a pill organizer. Mara's message read, For the record, I don't think tonight was a disaster. He smiled. Then typed, Your standards concern me. 3 dots appeared. Your mother raised the average. Wesley laughed quietly enough not to wake June. Then another message arrived. Coffee? Just the 2 of us this time. Wesley looked toward the hallway. For the first time in months, something about the next week felt like it belonged to him. But the restaurant scare had changed something else, too. The next morning, Wesley called Diane, and then June's clinic. Over the following days, they adjusted routines rather than pretending nothing had happened. June began carrying an identification card with Wesley's number. Unfamiliar public places came with new rules. Wesley stayed closer without taking over things she could still safely do herself. June disliked some of it. Wesley did, too. He hated taking away any piece of her independence before he had to. But he hated the memory of finding her alone in the cold even more. And when Mara saw them again, she noticed something that would matter later. Wesley did not treat the new precautions as punishment. He treated them as something they would figure out together. Their second date had no elderly chaperone. It still did not go according to plan. Mara arrived 11 minutes early, because Mara arrived 11 minutes early to everything. Wesley was already there. She stopped beside the table. You're early. So are you. I'm always early. That sounds exhausting. It's efficient. That also sounds exhausting. She sat. For the first 20 minutes, Mara did what she always did. Asked intelligent questions. Gave polished answers. Mentioned that she enjoyed hiking. Wesley tilted his head. Do you? What? Enjoy hiking. Of course. Because you said that exactly like someone answering a job interview. Mara stared. He took a drink of coffee. Sorry. No, you're not. Not especially. She narrowed her eyes. I hike. How often? Mara thought. 2 years ago. Wesley nodded. Serious commitment. She laughed despite herself, then stopped. How did you know? That you don't like hiking? That I was doing that. Doing what? She looked down at the table. Giving you the version that usually works. Wesley did not answer immediately. Finally he said, You don't have to do that with me. It was such a simple sentence that it made her uncomfortable. So she made a joke, but the mask had cracked. Over the next few weeks, their dates became less impressive and considerably better. They bought coffee at a weekend market. They walked through a used bookstore where Wesley found an old collection of jazz arrangements with 3 pages missing. Mara called buying it irrational. Wesley called the missing pages character. Once, Diane's schedule changed, and June came with them to lunch. Halfway through, June stopped talking. She looked at Mara with sudden embarrassment. "I'm sorry. I know you." Mara made it easy for her. "I'm Mara, Wesley's friend from the restaurant." June studied her for a second. "The one who didn't get pie?" Mara smiled. "That's me." The relief on June's face mattered more than either of them said. Wesley began noticing Mara in ways that had nothing to do with how she looked. She never spoke about June as though June were not sitting there. When June repeated a story, Mara listened again. When June needed extra time finding a word, Mara did not supply it unless June asked. She did not perform patience. She simply gave it. For Wesley, that was more intimate than flirting. One Saturday, Mara asked him a question that silenced him. "When was the last time you had a whole week that belonged to you?" Wesley looked out the cafe window. "I'm not sure." "That long?" "My dad died 5 months ago." Mara went still. He had mentioned his father, but never that recently. "I'm sorry." "Thank you. He was helping with your mom?" "Every day." Wesley folded his hands. "When Mom started having trouble, Dad and I divided things. Appointments, groceries, bills, making sure she wasn't driving on days she felt confused. And then you lost him." Wesley nodded. "Now Diane helps a few days a week. I teach lessons during the day, called her room 3 nights. Do you resent it?" The question came out before Mara could soften it. Wesley did not seem offended. He thought about it. "Some days I resent being tired." He looked at her. "I don't resent her." Mara said nothing. Wesley smiled faintly. "People think caregiving makes you noble. Mostly it makes you very familiar with insurance forms in grocery store pharmacies." Mara smiled. "You're allowed to be tired." "I know." "Do you?" He looked away. That was answer enough. Some of the strongest people rarely announce what they are carrying. They simply keep showing up. And if stories about ordinary people choosing quiet kindness are the kind you want more of, you're always welcome to stay with us. Because Mara had only begun to understand who Wesley Hart really was. A few nights later, she saw the part of him he almost never talked about. Mara went to the Calder room for the first time after a difficult investor meeting. She expected a hotel bar with a piano in the corner. She found that. What she did not expect was Wesley. He sat beneath low amber lights in a dark jacket with his sleeves pushed slightly above his wrists. The man Mara knew was dryly funny, perpetually tired, usually checking the time because someone needed medication or a piano lesson started in 20 minutes. The man at the piano seemed weightless. His hands moved with the ease of someone speaking a language he had known longer than English. He took an old jazz standard and changed it gently as he played, never showing off, never reaching for attention. Yet conversations near the bar slowly softened. People listened. Mara listened. When the song ended, Wesley glanced up and saw her. For 1 second, surprise broke his concentration. Then he smiled. It was the best thing Mara had seen all week. After his set, she met him near the piano. "You neglected to mention that you're good." "I told you I play." "That is like saying someone who owns a restaurant heats food." He laughed. "I'm going to keep that compliment." Diane arrived 20 minutes later with June. June liked hearing Wesley play when she was having a good evening. He sat again and played a simple melody. June's face changed almost immediately. Not magically, not dramatically. She simply became more present. Her fingers tapped the rhythm against the table. When he finished, she said, "Too fast." Wesley looked offended. "I am not 10 anymore." June smiled. Still impatient, Mara watched them both. 3 nights later, the same song meant something completely different. Mara stopped at Wesley's house after another long day. She found him in the kitchen. June sat at the table, unsettled. "What time is Raymond coming home?" she asked. Wesley paused. Mara knew enough now to understand. Raymond was Wesley's father, June's husband, dead 5 months. Wesley walked over. "Not tonight, Mom. He should have called." "I know. He always calls." Her voice tightened. Wesley crouched beside her. "Come sit with me. I need to wait for him." "We can wait in the other room." He led her to the piano. Mara remained near the kitchen doorway. Wesley played the melody June had criticized at Calder Room. Slower this time, June sat beside him. At first, she kept looking toward the front door. Then her shoulders lowered. Her fingertips began tapping lightly against her knee. The music did not restore a lost memory. It did not cure anything. It simply gave her something familiar to hold on to when the evening had become confusing. When Wesley stopped, June sighed. "That one's nice. You taught it to me." "Did I?" "Yeah," she smiled. "I had good taste." "You still do." Later, after June had gone to bed, Wesley stood alone in the kitchen. Mara leaned against the counter. He spoke without looking at her. "Sometimes I miss my dad." She waited. "And sometimes I miss my mom." Mara looked toward the hallway. Wesley swallowed. "Then I feel terrible for thinking that because she's still here." Mara walked closer. "She is here." He nodded. "And you still miss things that changed." He finally looked at her. "You don't have to make yourself guilty for noticing." Wesley exhaled slowly. Mara did not try to solve him. He noticed that. For someone who spent her professional life fixing problems, she was remarkably good at leaving certain things unfixed. And somewhere in that quiet kitchen, the relationship stopped feeling like a string of dates. It became something neither of them could dismiss so easily. A week later, Mara admitted why. They were sitting in her apartment eating takeout from cartons. "I predict people." Wesley looked up. "That sounds ominous." "I don't mean in a psychic way." "Disappointing." "I mean dates." She told him about the note in her phone. The forecasts, the questions, the masks. Wesley laughed at first. Then he realized she was serious. "So what did you predict about me?" Mara looked at him. "You were 31 minutes late with your mother." "That wasn't a prediction. It destroyed the prediction." He smiled. "And after that?" Mara was quiet. "I stopped making them. Something changed between them. Not suddenly. It had been changing for weeks. In restaurants, at the piano, in June's kitchen, in the pauses where neither of them pretended to have the right answer. Wesley reached for her hand. Mara let him. The following afternoon, June noticed Mara's shoes. Mara had come directly from a pitch meeting in narrow black heels. June stared at them. "Those shoes look angry." Mara looked down. "They are." "Why are you wearing angry shoes?" "Investors." June nodded, as if that explained everything. Then she said, "Shoes should help you go places, not punish you for going." Mara laughed. Wesley looked over from the sink. "That is surprisingly profound." June frowned. "It's shoes." They all laughed. None of them knew they would remember that conversation months later. By spring, Asterline Systems had 14 employees, 6 major regional customers, and exactly enough cash flow to make Mara lose sleep in expensive new ways. Then the call came from Texas. A national facilities company wanted Asterline's platform rolled out across 42 Texas service locations in 3 phases. If the implementation worked, it could give Asterline something every young company needed: stable recurring revenue, not instant wealth, not some fantasy overnight success. Time. Time to hire carefully. Time to improve the product. Time to stop living quarter to quarter. There was one condition. The client wanted Mara based in Austin through the 9-month rollout because the system was still young enough that major implementation decisions often needed founder-level judgment. 2 years earlier, she would have agreed before the sentence was finished. Now she stared at the offer for 3 days, then 4. She did not tell Wesley, not because she intended to lie, because for the first time in her adult life, Mara was genuinely considering saying no to the opportunity she had spent years building toward. That frightened her. What frightened her more was why. The truth reached Wesley accidentally. Asterline held a small celebration after the agreement moved into final review. Mara invited Wesley to play piano. Near the end of the evening, one of her senior employees raised a glass. To the Texas rollout and to Mara, if she decides she can survive 9 months in Austin without reorganizing the entire state. Everyone laughed. Except Wesley, his hand stopped above the keys. Mara looked across the room. Their eyes met. She knew immediately. He had not known. And the way he looked at her told Mara that the next conversation would not be easy. After the guests left, Wesley found her stacking glasses near the conference room counter. 9 months? Mara put down the glass. "I was going to tell you." "When?" "I don't know." "That's usually not a good answer." "I haven't accepted yet." He stared at her, then understood. Were you going to turn it down? Mara folded her arms. I was considering it. Don't. Her expression changed. Don't what? Don't turn it down because of me. Mara gave a short laugh. That was quick. No. Wesley's voice lowered. It wasn't. You heard one sentence and decided the answer for both of us. I know what this means for your company. So do I. You spent years building this. I'm aware. And you're going to give it up because... Because what? Wesley stopped. Mara waited. He looked tired. Not physically. Something deeper. Because my life is complicated. Mara stared at him. That's what you think this is? Mom is going to need more help, not less. I can't move to Austin. I wouldn't ask you to stay. I didn't ask you to. And I'm not going to become the reason you look back in 3 years and wonder what would have happened. Mara's eyes narrowed. You don't get to decide what I'm willing to choose. I'm trying to protect you. That's not protection. Her voice remained calm, which made the words land harder. That's you making my decision, and calling it kindness. Wesley looked away. Mara stepped closer. You are very good at giving things up for people. He looked at her. You gave up touring because your parents needed you. You rearranged your life when your dad died. You cancel things without complaining. You move yourself out of the way before anyone has to ask. What's wrong with that? Nothing, she swallowed. Until you start doing it for me. Wesley said nothing. Mara's voice softened. I am not asking you to hold me back. Then, quieter, I'm asking you not to push me away and call it love. That hurt because it was true. Wesley had spent so long making himself easier for other people to need that he had never noticed another habit growing beside it. He removed himself before he could become a burden. Mara picked up her coat. She did not make a decision that night. That mattered. She went home angry. She slept badly. The next morning, she spent 3 hours with her operations lead going through the Texas rollout line by line. Staffing, cash flow, client expectations, what Austin could mean, what saying no could cost. After everyone left, Mara remained alone in the conference room. Wesley had been wrong to choose for her, but she would not correct that mistake by choosing against him. The question was not what Wesley wanted, or what would hurt least. It was what she wanted her life to become. By the following afternoon, she knew. She went to Wesley's house. June was in the living room working on a crossword puzzle. Wesley met Mara in the kitchen. I'm going to Austin. He searched her face. Mara continued. Not because you told me to. A faint smile touched his mouth. Understood. I'm going because I want it. You should. And I'm still angry with you. That also seems fair. Neither of them laughed very much. Because knowing why Mara was leaving did not make 9 months feel shorter, and neither of them knew yet what distance would expose. June understood only parts of the situation when Wesley explained it. Mara is going to Texas for work. June looked concerned. Is Texas far? Far enough. Are you going? No. June thought about that. Why? Mom. She frowned. I didn't tell you not to go. Wesley laughed despite himself. That is not exactly the issue. 2 days before Mara's flight, Diane took June shopping. Wesley assumed they needed groceries. They returned with a shoebox. June carried it herself. The night before Mara left, they had dinner at Wesley's house. Afterward, June pushed the box across the table. For you. Mara looked surprised. You bought me something? Open it. Inside was a simple pair of gray walking shoes. Mara stared, then laughed. The angry shoes. June looked pleased. If you're going somewhere, you need good shoes. Mara ran one thumb over the laces. Inside the box lay a note written in June's uneven handwriting. Diane had helped with the spelling, but the words were June's. For wherever your feet need to go. And for when they know it's time to come home, June. Mara stopped smiling. Wesley looked down. June seemed suddenly uncertain. Do you like them? Mara stood and hugged her. Yes. Her voice broke. I really do. June patted her back. Good. Shoes shouldn't make people cry. At the airport the next morning, Wesley carried one of Mara's bags to the security entrance. They stood there too long. Mara adjusted the strap on her shoulder. Say something. Wesley smiled faintly. Call me when you land. That's what you've got? It's practical. You're a romantic. I play piano in a hotel lounge. I have a reputation to protect." Mara laughed. Then the laughter disappeared. Neither said, "Wait for me." Neither promised nothing would change. 9 months was too long for promises made only because goodbye felt unbearable. Mara stepped toward security. Wesley called after her. "Mara." She turned. He had a dozen sentences in his head. He chose one. "Make it worth the 9 months." Mara looked at him. "I intend to." Then she walked away. 9 months was long enough for a company to change. Long enough for June to have better weeks and harder ones. Long enough for two people to discover whether what they had could survive when staying close was no longer convenient. And for the first time, neither Mara nor Wesley could predict the answer. For the first few weeks, Wesley and Mara tried to schedule calls. Schedules failed. So they stopped pretending distance would be organized. Sometimes Mara called from a rideshare at 10:30 at night. Sometimes Wesley sent a 30-second recording from the empty Calder room after closing. No speeches, no declarations. One night during her second month in Austin, Mara sat alone on the floor of her temporary apartment after a 12-hour implementation problem. Her phone buzzed. A message from Wesley. "Thought you might need this." Attached was a short piano recording, the melody June had taught him. Mara listened twice, then a third time. In month 3, Mara made her first short trip back to Pittsburgh. It lasted barely a weekend, squeezed between Texas meetings and a Monday morning flight. Seeing Wesley in the same room again was almost worse than missing him. For 48 hours, life felt normal. Then, it didn't. During that visit, Mara saw June hesitate over her name again. She did not flinch. She sat beside her at dinner, listened to the same story twice, and helped clear the dishes afterward. When Mara left Sunday afternoon, Wesley understood something important. She was not attached only to the easy version of his life. In month 4, during one of their video calls, June looked at the screen for several seconds. "Hello?" "Hi, June." June smiled politely. "Are you Wesley's friend?" The words hurt. Mara had known they might. She did not show it. "Yeah," she smiled. "A pretty good one, I hope." June nodded. "Good. He needs those." Mara laughed softly. Wesley, standing behind the phone, looked away for a moment. Mara never asked June, "Do you remember me?" She was learning something distance could not teach through a spreadsheet. Respect did not mean demanding proof that you still occupied a place in someone else's memory. Sometimes it meant meeting them exactly where they were that day. In month 5, Mara came back to Pittsburgh again. The trip was just as short. June was having a better week. She remembered Mara immediately and complained that Austin had apparently failed to improve her shoe choices. Mara laughed for the rest of the evening. Those brief visits did not solve the distance. They made the stakes clearer, because every goodbye now belonged to something real. But in Austin, another choice was already taking shape, and this one could keep Mara away much longer than 9 months. By month 6, the Texas rollout was working. Too well. The client wanted to expand. Several new prospects wanted meetings. For the first time, people inside Asterline began talking about Austin not as a project, but as a possible long-term growth base. Mara could stay. Professionally, there were good reasons to. For 3 days, she said nothing. Wesley did not ask. This time he had learned. When she finally told him, he said only, "What do you want?" Mara noticed the question. Not "what should you do?" Not "what are you giving up?" "What do you want?" "I don't know yet." "Then figure that out first." She smiled. "You're improving." Painfully. By month 8, Mara had her answer. Austin had exposed something uncomfortable about Asterline. Too many decisions still came back to her. If the company was going to grow, she needed other people capable of making choices she had always kept for herself. So she hired an experienced operations director in Texas. The Austin office would remain. The contracts would remain. Mara would travel there regularly. But the company no longer needed her physically present every day for the system to work. Wesley knew the original Texas rollout ended on the first Friday of month 9. What Mara had not told him was where she had decided to base herself after that. Not because she wanted to hide another major decision, she wanted that conversation in person. At the Calder room. On the first Friday of month 9, Wesley sat at the piano beneath the same amber lights where Mara had first heard him play. He was halfway through a song when he looked toward the entrance. His hands nearly missed a chord. Mara stood just inside the room. Jeans, dark coat, hair longer than when she left, No angry heels, gray walking shoes, June's shoes. Wesley finished the song because he was a professional. Barely. When the applause ended, Mara was still there. And this time, neither of them needed 9 months to understand what the other was feeling. Wesley walked toward her. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, he looked down. Those shoes seem familiar. Mara glanced at them. They've seen a lot of airports. What happens now? Mara knew what he was really asking. She smiled. Austin is staying. Something small fell in his expression. She saw it. Then she continued. So am I. Wesley looked up. Mara told him about the new operations director, the Texas office, the travel, Pittsburgh becoming her home base again. You didn't leave the opportunity? He asked. Mara shook her head. No. She looked toward the piano. I stopped assuming I had to personally carry every part of it. Wesley stared at her. For months, he had imagined the possibilities. Mara returning because the project failed. Mara staying because it succeeded. Mara deciding that what they had was too complicated. He had not predicted this. Neither had she. A few days later, Mara went to see June. June sat near the window sorting sheet music into piles that made sense only to her. She looked up. For a moment, Mara could not tell whether she was recognized, so she did not force it. Hi, June. June looked down at Mara's shoes. Those look comfortable. Mara smiled. They are. Good. June returned to the music, then paused. You went somewhere. Mara's throat tightened. Yeah. June looked up again. Did you find your way back? Wesley, standing in the doorway, stopped moving. Maybe June remembered. Maybe she remembered the shoes. Maybe she remembered only part of a conversation from months before. Or maybe she simply saw a woman who had traveled and asked the most natural question in the world. It did not matter. Mara looked at Wesley, then back at June. Yeah. She smiled. I think I did. Later that night, Wesley and Mara walked through downtown Pittsburgh after his set. There was no engagement ring, no wedding plan, no promise that June's illness would become easier. No promise that Asterline would never create another difficult choice. Mara would still travel. Wesley would still have nights when he needed to leave dinner early because June was frightened or Diane needed help. Their lives had not become simpler. They had become more honest. Wesley looked at Mara. You know, our first date started with me 31 minutes late. I remember. And you came back 9 months later. I came back exactly when I needed to. He smiled. You never told me you would. Mara slipped her hand into his. No. She looked ahead. I think I had to find that out for myself. Wesley had spent years believing love meant making himself smaller so no one else had to sacrifice. Mara had spent years trying to predict every ending before it could hurt her. Neither idea survived, knowing the other. And June had taught them something without ever trying to. A person could need help and still deserve dignity. A caregiver could love deeply without disappearing inside responsibility. And loving someone did not mean asking them to stop growing. Sometimes love was simply making room. For work, for grief, for aging parents, for distance, for plans that changed. Mara had not come home because Austin failed. Wesley had not won because she surrendered something. They had simply stopped asking which life had to become smaller. They started asking how both lives could fit. If you had been Mara, would you have taken the 9-month opportunity? And if you had been Wesley, would you have told her to go? There may not be one right answer, but perhaps that is exactly why choices like these matter. Because love is not proved by making every decision for someone else. Sometimes it is proved by respecting them enough to let the choice remain theirs, and by still being there when they find their way back,